This episode is sponsored by The Alcohol Experiment, a free 30-day challenge designed to interrupt your patterns, give you control, restore your health, and put you back in touch with the version of you who doesn't need alcohol to cope, relax, or enjoy life. More than 220,000 people have already tried The Alcohol Experiment for themselves and have seen improved sleep, increased happiness, reduced anxiety, and so much more. Join thousands in this inspiring, hopeful, and exciting program where you examine your beliefs and reconnect with the best version of you without ever feeling like you're missing out. Start today for free at alcoholexperiment.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and I am here with This Naked Mind podcast. And today I have Onowa. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, Annie. How are you?
Great. We were just commenting how we matched unknowingly. It's very fun.
Yes,
awesome.
Psychically.
Yeah. So why don't you sort of take us back to the beginning for you in terms of your drinking story? Where did it all start for you?
So first of all, I just have to say how grateful I am to be here with you, Annie. I mean, and just have the opportunity to say to you how much your work, you've expanded my world beyond what you could know. And I think you do know some of those, but I have to just like to sit in this space and to be able to share my story. It's just, you've given this great gift to the world, and the ripple effect, we all see that happening all these ways that it opens up for people, but it's such a gift. And so it means a world that I can be here with you right now and sharing part of my story and how that impacted and opened up these new possibilities. So that's awesome. It's a big deal.
It means a lot.
Yeah. It means a lot to me too. So for my story, I do want to take it back to childhood, because so much of that did shape where I am now and these life experiences that I had. And so back to the beginning, when I was born to a single mom, and she was an artist, and she lived in, Northern California in the 60s and had this, really unique life. And what is so interesting right now that only just happened recently is that I've been able to piece together some of this early life because I have her journals. So I have pages and pages and journals and stacks of journals that I only could read after, all these other things had happened, that I could really sit down and read them. But it's been fascinating. It's like this piece of history that I wouldn't otherwise have known. So I have some of these early life things pieced together a little bit more because of those journals and being able to almost become best friends with my mom through time and space. And the other interesting thing is my daughter and I are the exact age difference that my mom and I were.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like this real time, I don't know, it's been really, really interesting. And so for a while I thought, maybe these journals aren't to be read. I don't know if I'd want my journals to be read. And so I kind of went back and forth with that. But after I've opened them and started, it's been just like this healing experience of connecting in this really unique way, because she was ahead of her time. She was just this really intelligent, amazing artist who was just, her journals are just like art too. The way she writes, and it's just really fascinating. So it's such an honor to her and for me to experience it, So anyway, piecing together some early life has been fascinating. And of course there's more that weaves into all of that, but it was my mom and I, and she decided early on, I think it was around 5, to move to Mexico. And her best friend lived down there. And so she said, come on down to Mexico. And so we picked up and moved. And so that also really shaped my early experience, especially just, going somewhere completely different and being in that space. And so we lived a few different cities down there. And, a lot of my early memories now I'm piecing together. I'm kind of getting to those chapters of the journals. So I'll know more later, but you have these fuzzy memories. And so it's interesting to connect that, but we decided, so it's cool. It's a really it's unique that I have that, really. So we decided to move back to the States, and we moved to a small little town. And a few years into that, and definitely my mom started to get sick. She wasn't up for doing things, now that I'm looking back, I'm like, okay, I could see that a little bit more, how she was feeling. And she had her journey on this planet. She had her experiences, the things she was working through. And we knew, like, she wrote me this amazing letter before she died. And she like knew we had this uniquely like connected, but like this experience that we were going to have, that it wasn't like something, she knew that something was maybe going to happen, but that we had this just really unique bonding too, because it was just her and I. And so the year she started to get sick, I was 5th grade. And that was really touch and go. And so that really started to shape, I would go to bed and you don't know if she was going to be alive when I woke up. And so the realization of that, and then it's happening almost this slow motion, but fast. And I was 10, getting ready to turn 11. And, that's such a tricky time. And so you're experiencing this in this small town, which also was like highlighted. So you're the child that has this sick mom, and it just was so surreal and difficult. But my mom and I just had such a bond and a closeness. Like we snuggled and loved, and she just had this way about her and the vibe she would create in our house. And she would be doing art and painting and incense. And, I could just watch her and love her. And she knew she had to talk to me about other things. I think she knew she had to, she was just very honest with me, and we were just very honest with each other. And we realized like we had to figure out where I would go after she died. And what a difficult conversation, Yeah. So that was really tricky and such a pivotal moment in my life, realizing what we were up against. And so in the midst of all of this, like this amazing thing happened. So my 1st grade teacher in this little town, when I first moved from Mexico, who helped me so much acclimate to like moving into this town and back into the States and what that was like. She and her family decided that they would take me in, which now when you think about it as an adult, with your own children, she had her own children, her own family. As an 11, I was almost 11, to take this child in, but it was such a gift. She gave this gift to my mom, to me, like that we knew I had this place to go, which is huge. I mean, it was really just, you look back and you think like, okay, you've had these experiences, but there's also all these like magical, like divine ways that we're connected, and there's something there. It was really special. So being able to share my story also honors that too, this piece of what happened and how she stepped in for me. And so that gave me a place to go while my mom was getting more touch and go. And she was there with me, those last days. And when I got to hug my mom after she died, and, that was such a tragedy, such like, it's the unthinkable, basically, for, so how I knew how I would have to step up and try to figure this out. So like early on, I was like, okay, I've got to figure this out. But in this little town, which is so unique, we were able to do things just our way. So we had prepared like her funeral, and I had special things to lay by her. And they put the coffin in a truck. I rode in the truck, and that night we went to bury her. And like all these people from the town gathered. It's a small town, and we did this ceremony, which is like very fuzzy in a way, piecing it together now. But because your brain protects you on certain things like that. But it was also just this, it was just such this huge, obviously my whole life, my whole life was turned upside down. And to manage that and deal with that was really, really tricky. So that, I think, that's important. That's an important part of my story, because obviously that was like such a pivotal part of my youth. And just the healing that continues from there, and the inner child work, and the going back to yourself as that 11-year-old, and picking you up and keeping you with you, and your future, like fifth dimension self also swooping in. Like, we have this healing that can happen. And so in turn, like some time passes on, and it's decided it's probably best for me to live with another family. And this was I wasn't quite aware of that at this point. And, there's been a lot of healing and full circle come. Obviously, my first grade teacher is so much more to me that, my children call her their grandma and grandpa. And it's like this amazing journey that we've been through. But at that time, in your early teens, I might have, there was obviously some things to process. And so I remember like looking back at that with shame, seeing some of these early life. So that led to me living with a family friend. And then after that, I lived with 2 other foster families through high school. So that was a lot of families to live with in a pretty short amount of time. And so it's hard not to look back and think, oh, I wasn't doing it right, or, putting meaning, the story that you're telling yourself around these things, when then as you look as an adult, or you connect to other women who've experienced that kind of a loss, and there's books about it, and you can learn all these different things, which is really, it's really special. And that's an important part of my story, because like, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end with you surviving these things and like doing these external, there's like so much more to give and to offer back from that. So as you can imagine, I haven't even got into the drinking yet, but
wow, that's
I'm sorry.
It's amazing for sharing that.
Yeah, it's important. I always kept it private, because it was my nature to keep it private. It was also a stigma I felt. And I was always trying to go beyond what my limitations that I kind of grown up with. And so my dear friends knew, but I didn't really, sharing it now is big for me to share, because, there's so much healing that happens with that. But the thing of it is that the vulnerability, and when other people have shared, and your podcast has opened up for me stories that I could hear a little of I could listen to stories all the time. It meant so much, and it offered me different perspectives and healing within that. So I think it's really important, to not keep it. It doesn't stay there. You can move forward. So I lived on the border, though, of Mexico, and so different foster homes. And back in this time, you could just go across the line. We called it across the line. You just walk across the line with your school ID, and you have the bars, the nightclubs. It's like a whole scene. And I was 15. And so I get there, and you walk across, you have your little school ID, and they hand you a shot of tequila. And you walk in, and you're like, whoa, it's a whole scene. And so as you can imagine, I'm like navigating all these things. And it was only after your work too that I'm like, oh, that's where it clicked. Like, that's where it clicked. So, well, it's like, you almost feel like, this is offering me a little bit of relief, or a way, like it starts to click in that different way. So it's really interesting how that happens. And it was so accessible. I mean, half days from school, everyone just goes to the bar, and then it turns into a nightclub, and then you're out. And it's like, that is a lot. And it's a whole big thing. So naturally, and I remember even taking it a little bit too far then, where some of my friends are like, okay, and it was just so easy to go too far with it because I mean, it was affordable and free stuff. And, it's a whole lot of stuff going on right across the line right there. But anyway, so move to college, fast forward to college. And it was really, there you don't even have any of those like other little boundaries, right? Because you're completely on your own. Like I didn't even have something so it escalated in college. And I think another part of it was, I was uncomfortable with what I knew and what I was able to do. And I was trying to make this big jump. And I see like you're trying to, from this one type of living and what you see, like you're trying to make a jump into a different scene. And there's like unspoken things that you just don't know maybe, or even, I mean, simple things that like, I didn't know how to pack a bag and you throw stuff in your bag or how to eat. And I would see people moving their children up to college and setting up their rooms with stuff. And I'm like, I don't have that. And I don't know that stuff. And so I think that level of uncomfort with like knowing, which of course, how would you know? You gather so much information from watching your mom and all these different years of your life. You don't, and then it's disjointed. And so you're missing some things. And so I think that led to college, me really taking it to another level with alcohol, because it was like how you adult and how you grow up. And it's almost like it washes this blanket over things you don't know, because you're like, oh, well, everyone was doing that. And the unique thing in college is I met, some of the most amazing women and friends. And we were kids then, but now, 25 plus years later, still the best of friends. Like I had this opportunity for a different type of family and help and like love. And it was just really incredible. And it just happened to be my first roommate that we just got matched up together. And then all of these friends connected, and it was just really beautiful. But in that time too, I think a lot of people gravitated who were also still like, there was a lot of partying going on. And I'm sure that's pretty typical, right? It sounds like for most people in college, but I think it was just what we did for everything. It was how we celebrated or how we didn't celebrate, how we just had a regular day, and everything was really connected to that. And so the one thing I always really kept steady though is school. Even through high school, through all of it, I was like, I liked doing well. I liked learning. It was like the place I knew. And I was like, I knew I needed to figure stuff out, and I liked it. And so I just stayed really steady with school. And then like the double life starts happening more, where you're like doing all these things, but only a little bit, because on the exterior, you can wash a lot more off in college. But I did notice it was starting to change a bit of who I was, because the day and like the anxiety and a worry and not feeling good, that just starts shaping. And so now that I reflect back, I'm like, oh, okay, I could see that starting to happen. But, and during this time, another thing that really was significant. So I get a call from the family who took me in originally, who's now like, we're family, I have a sister and a brother from that family. And there was a car accident. And so my brother died in a car accident, and he was only 15. And so I was in college in a different scene. I hadn't been there. I'd been in these different houses. I hadn't had a chance I hadn't spoken to him in a long time. And so going back and seeing that tragedy through their eyes, and through, it was really it was really sad. It was just awful, you know, to experience that. And I remember even thinking, okay, well, alcohol like will help you manage that, you know? And so that was a big thing that happened in our family, this life. So fast forwarding out of college, you know, I started to really focus on external successes, and I got married to an amazing man, and bought a home, and worked on my career, got my master's, doing all these things that, you know, I wanted to accomplish. But this is starting where that more of that cognitive dissonance starts, because you're living this life, but then again, that double life of, you know, it's just not matching up. And I started to feel it like in me, but I didn't know. And I honestly, Annie, I could never imagine thinking, oh, well, like alcohol, like it was so ingrained in everything that I did. And I know you've said this before too, but I really did think it was the glue. It was like giving me the energy to get it done, to figure it out, to like, you would be telling me, I was like, you know, and the connection and with friends and all of that. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting how it really feels that way. So the big next thing that happened that really changed is that I decided to have a home birth, 2 home births with my children. And this is where like things really started to like tap into me. And, you know, you go through, of course, I mean, for me, I didn't drink during pregnancy. You're in this different type of tapping into these like universal energies. And so that started to really show me like what was possible. And then going through the home birth and like resonating with your strength and experiencing that is like you're tapping into these 2 worlds. And so I started to really see what was there. But interestingly enough, after you have the baby, you're breastfeeding, it's like drinking just creeps back in. And I realized that even though I stopped drinking for this time and baby, like I didn't do the work around it. Because I was like, oh, I'll go back. Don't worry. I'll be at that party at that time and be able to do that, you know? So you're like almost suspended in it, right? You're not, and how interesting that you could just stop. Well, for me, right? Oh, were you pregnant? Of course you'll stop. So that was interesting. So not doing the work around it, you know, definitely led it to creep back in. But I had this pull, this like knowing. I knew there was something and I couldn't get to it. And it was years and years. And it was like I could kind of get there, but then something was blocking me. And I could feel it blocked, but I knew there was something. And so I started pouring, like I love to research and anything about food and EMFs and fluoride and mattresses and, you know, anything, especially when it comes to caring for my children. I just research and I want to find more information. And I'm like really conscious of what we put into our bodies and around like with my kids and their health. And like then the disconnect, but like, oh, the cheapest wine. Okay, sure. Like, you know, like it was weird that you'd worry so much, like all these little specific things, and this alcohol gets a free pass. And I think that's really where the trickiness of the gray area drinking slips into, because it's like just keeping you not able to access, like, but where you're on the external, you're like, well, it's just these events and I'm just having a few glasses here and a few glasses there. And like, there's nothing to like, be like, oh my gosh, this is it for you. And so I think that almost leaves you stuck so much longer. Not, and I don't know, that's projecting that image, but because it's just okay. Everything's okay. You're like just keeping that steadiness. And now that I've learned so much more about alcohol, like how much time it takes to really remove from your body, that it's in there. So even if you think you're drinking, it's still always there. It never could give me a chance to see what it was like with fully without. So I tried cleanses and sugar detox and like ways that I knew I was searching, but I never could figure it out. I couldn't figure it out, which is really interesting. And so in the search for food and learning more about our environment, anyway, I was reading different blogs, and this one woman who wrote a recipe, and I was like all into her paleo thing. I was going to read her recipe. Just out of nowhere, by perfect coincidence, her recipe was short and her story was really long, you know, how you have to read to get to it. And I just started reading her story, and her vulnerability and her honesty was floored me. She explained how she took this time off alcohol and what this had done, and like all these things that opened up for her. And halfway through, she said, there's this book, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And something I was like, whoa. And the impact of her sharing her story so vulnerably, like I was just here in the world, like, I don't know. It's just the impact, right, of somebody sharing how it could mean. So I've written her a message, but
that's awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah. So she shared your book and was like, you know, and I just knew. I'm like, okay. I got your book that day, and I read it in 2 days. And it was incredible. It was like this gift that you gave me I was sitting on all these things that I had inherited over all these years that I thought were true. And things started to unravel for me so quickly. So it's like the book, it just gave me this great gift to like all these things that can expand beyond that. Removing this one thing, like how you talk about so much, is like that domino, right? This one thing that's keeping you stuck. It was like keeping me from accessing that. And so I read the book, and it just started unraveling. My husband was like, "What are you reading?" Because I couldn't help but share it. And he's like, "I've been feeling this pull too." So we went through it together. By me lecturing to him mostly, I don't know how he did it, but so I would keep telling him, but it was a really bonding and unique experience that we could do that together. And I saw the power of connecting while we're navigating through this and exploring and going through that first year. And so that was in 2018. And then it was incredible what was underneath all of that. That removing that was what I was searching for. That was what I was feeling pulled to. And now I could see, like, I had been afraid, like, to feel through an emotion and to know that, you know, how much we shape our lives. And I'd seen it, and I'd tapped into it, but it was so blocked. And it is just really, really incredible to have that. So a couple years later then too, I saw, like, I'd been really connected with your community, and seeing that community, I started sharing it with friends, and then seeing their experience open up and that vibe that you feel like there's so much more we're here for. And they're like, "Oh, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm doing this." You're like, you can feel it like energetically. You're like, "Oh my gosh, this is where I need to be." Like, there's all these things to do and discover. And I love that. I love that, being able to share that with somebody and then share that with others. And so I just felt so called to your coaching program and see that. And I'd been a teacher for so long, and in education and doing all these different things, but being able to share this, what I felt so passionately about, like opening up this opportunity, coming from these life experiences, you know, you're this, and being able to then do so much more and see all these other things that open up for you. And so then the coaching program was this next big, I mean, huge life-changing experience. The mastermind and the coaches and people who are on this level, like we're leveling, we're feeling it energetically, like the planet's like calling us to this. There's so much in it, and sharing it in that experience and bouncing that off of people, and the people you meet and the incredible friendships you form, and just the self-discovery too has just been amazing. So I completed the program, and now I'm, have my own coaching business, which I named fosteringyou.co, because I wanted to, as a child, I would think like, oh, you have these, like, someone will save me. And, and maybe as an adult too, you think like,
Yeah.
who's going to come and take me, rescue me. And like through this and through the healing, you've given me the gift of being able to unlock all of this healing, but you're saving yourself, you're fostering you. And that's all of a sudden like, okay, wait, it's me. Like, okay, but that's also the beauty in it, because it's you and you had it all along in there. And so that is what, and I, fostering you and co, like you're in good company. Like, even if you've experienced, we all have these different stories with like shared threads of feelings and things through it, but we're all working on those. Like, we've all had experiences that we're all fostering ourselves and seeing what's possible. So it's been really amazing. And it's just such an honor to be able to share that with you because it's such an impact, on my life, on my family, on my friends. So.
Well, that's so amazing. Wow. What a compelling story. So, you and your husband kind of read the book, and then in the early days, were there any bumps or struggles, or, how did people in your social world react? How did that go?
That's interesting. I feel like I had a lot of my bumps early on. I was doing a lot of pre-work and that, but reading the book. So for me, it was life-changing. And having my husband join me was incredible. What I think was unique about us being able to share it together is that we didn't have to make it we kind of could just navigate together. And so that was unique. And that's where I really saw the power of having someone, like, as you're navigating it, because there's things that you don't see and ways that you're connecting and talking to someone through it. It was really powerful. I think it really through our family and friends, like, people think, oh, you're doing this for now, or are you still doing that? Like, and I approached it that way too, Annie, and I still do. Like, nothing about, like, I don't like hard and fast rules. Like, I'll rebel against myself right now. And so I don't say any rules about how I'm approaching it. Like, alcohol is not serving me. It's allowing me to see all these other things that aren't serving me either, and tap into the energy that I know is for me. And that feels right for me right now. And so I really approached it in this way. Like, I don't know. Initially, Annie, I thought I would do it well, first of all, I didn't want to tell anybody, because I was like, I better not say a peep. I like to kind of keep things quiet. And then I was thought 30 days. And so when I signed up, so I read your book and I signed up for the free alcohol experiment. And that was also such a big impact, because it was right in line with exactly what I needed each of those days. You're like a mind reader with that. So that was really, really huge. And it gave me that support I needed at that time, big time. And then we just started navigating it. I think people were really surprised, because a lot of our events, even our wedding and our early life and partying, it was a big part of like the scene. And I do have some friends that shared that they were sad. And I know that feeling too, because I remember when people would say, oh, I'm not drinking right now. You're like, wait, what? Because I'm like, no, that's not good, because I'm not ready to figure that out myself yet, because that's like the thing you share. And alcohol is so good at making you like, it's so good at connecting in those things that are joy and fun and connection. It wrapped itself so well in there. So you think, oh, those late nights talking with my best girlfriend. Oh, was it the alcohol? Or was it the connection and remembering and the joy and all the other things that I started to uncover too, like how much it made my anxiety that I carried so far with me that, oh my gosh, that was fueling it to this great degree. So I think our family, there's little things that you see along the way and you piece together, but I don't know, we just found this way to navigate it together. And it's kind of cool to see the ripple. And now that it's been almost 3 years, like I was talking to my sister-in-law and she's like, oh, it's neat to hear their perspective of where we were and what we do now and how we vacation and all these things that it opened up for me that I thought was a thing that I loved about it, like was the joy and the fun, and that it's not. So I don't know, that's a roundabout answer of saying it. I guess it was, there was mixed views, but I think overall it's, it opens up all these other things too of connection and presence and beauty and friendships and family. So yeah,
totally. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's so good. There was something that you said that I really related to. Now it's totally slipped my mind about the rules and just not, making sure that you're not even giving yourself an ultimatum, because even though in your heart you're like, yeah, no, this is the right choice for me right now, but just not falling into like the labels or rules for me has been really useful and valuable and kind of like really empowering in a way. And so I resonate with that a lot.
I think I resonate with it so much. If you hadn't given, it's so funny how, in alcohol too, since it's numbing, it kind of keeps your world small. But you gave this like door option 3. You're like, bringing this awareness and like how, and these the options where it opens the conversation. And I think that's such a big part of it too. Like in that gray area or however you're drinking, like, could we want to feel better? Could we be tapping into what that healing and that you feel in your heart? Like you gave this, it's so interesting how funny you can kind of get this or that. And you're like, what about this? And you're like, wow. Oh, that question now opened up everything for me, allowed me to explore something, honestly, Annie, I probably wouldn't have, because I didn't want to think of any, other option, right? Like I couldn't imagine not leaving alcohol and like being like where it feels. I wanted exactly how your words, small and irrelevant. I didn't want it to consume my brain power. I have other things to do here. And it's so consuming and so every day. And I just thought, gosh, a life of it, always that. I can't, that's not for me. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I didn't want to do it. And so you offered this way to explore it, that you bring something that feels so big and it's so tangled that makes it approachable. And also it's like just the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So true.
Yeah.
So great. I can, in every story I hear, I think there's parts of it where I'm like, oh yeah, that was something for me too. Or I remember that. I actually remember going to El Paso, Texas when I was 19 or something, and going across the border to Juarez, and it being like, oh wow, you can drink here. That's interesting. And everybody drinking and stuff. And it was a good thing I wasn't living there. It was just a week-long trip, but it was very much because I was kind of a rule follower. Sometimes I wasn't, but it was like, oh, it's legal. And it was so interesting, just that culture of just a humongous group of kids walking over the border to the bars and then walking back over the border, and just every single night, just as long as you had an ID. So yeah. I visualize that very well. Mm-hmm. I was there for a few nights of my life. That's very interesting.
Yes, it is.
Well, this has been great. So first of all, let me ask you now, and I love the name of your coaching practice. I think it's so true and appropriate. And the idea of really like we're the ones, right? Like, especially with the inner child work that you were talking about and stuff, like we do have this power, you know, everything is inside of us that we ever need. And sometimes I actually, when I feel stuck in my own life, I think about that. I heard that from, I don't know who it was, but basically this idea that like, how do you feel if you just close your eyes and be like, all I need is within me now? Like right now, everything I need is already within me. Like, how does that make you feel? Like, mm-hmm. And so it can be a really great sort of mantra when you're stuck. And I think that's the essence of fostering you, which is just so cool. So where would people find you?
So my website is fosteringyou.co. So you can just go to my website. I have groups and coaching on there and different events and things like that I'm putting together, which is really exciting. So that's also my Instagram. It's Onowa_fosteringyou.co, but you can also get to it just through the website. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so great. That's so cool. Yeah. And so then let me ask you the question that I sort of ask at the end of all of these, which is if you were going to go back in time to the girl who really felt like it was the glue holding everything together, what would you tell her about how life is now?
So I think a lot of what you just said, like you have this access to this universal energy, to your truth. You have it. And this is like, I wasn't aware of how big of an obstacle alcohol was in my way of seeing that. And so once you remove that, then you're able to connect to it, connect to your truth, to your intuition, to all these things that I kept feeling this pull to. So I think I just would want to let, really that experience of really living your life, the highs and the lows, and what that's teaching you and how we're navigating through that. So I think just letting me know, just like what you said, like when we close our eyes, like we have it all here, and that this one obstacle, you're going to have these tools, like get curious, bring awareness to it. And curiosity allows you to see that without so much judgment, because you're just curious. And that's so much of your work, which just offers you that space. You're like, okay, I can do curiosity. So I think those would be the things, like you have it in you. We are connected. Get curious about this. And there's so much more on the other side that you're here to do.
Yeah, I feel like that just resonates with so many people on sort of this side of the conversation. It's like, wow, I had no idea how it would awaken my intuition, how I would be able to see things I couldn't see before, how I would be able to move in ways that I didn't realize, like move forward and move through things, and how things were such big issues and problems were actually manageable and solvable. And so many things, because we have great power in us, and alcohol really dampens that power. It takes it and pulls it right down. And, if there's something you wanted to give someone to make them weak, it would be something addictive, so that they lose control of their own desires. And it is, very much like, that's how it was in my life. It's like, well, I sometimes had this vision of like this awake person, and then it would come in and I would just like be like slowly falling asleep, and part of me would be like screaming like, no, don't, no, this is not what's supposed to be happening. And then like you're under, and it's sort of like you're back in the cycle. And is kind of a fuzzy idea, but just this idea of like, when I was away from it, I would be myself, and then it would kind of take and kind of seep out this life force, and I'd be falling back asleep.
Yes. The power, our innate power. Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. I completely hear. And then you can start seeing other things that aren't serving you, like, cause it keeps you from, seeing some of those things. Yeah. It really does keep you from your power.
Yeah. It really keeps it like blinders almost, like, cause when you're numbing your inner guidance system, which is your emotions and your intuition, then you are walking through things blind,
yes.
which is content. So
yeah, definitely.
Anyway, well, this has been just so great. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it means a lot. It's such a way to honor some of that with my mother and the journey through all of that. So I really appreciate this space and being able to do it, and for you, Annie. So I really appreciate it so much.
Are you ready for a deep dive and truly lasting change? If so, you might consider my intensive program. It's a 9-week self-led program that you can do in the complete comfort of your own home, and it will truly transform your relationship with alcohol. If you want to learn more about this, go to thisnakedmind.com/intensive. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.